Recording. Um, I think it's just before we start, Yevamos, it's we didn't learn this together yesterday, but I just feel like we need to do a quick refresher about Yibum, and I'll just talk about it outside, and then I'll let you read through all of the cases in the Mishnah. But the fundamental of Yevamos is a man dies childless, and his brother has a duty to marry the widow in order
Mm.
to perpetuate the brother's name. Okay, we'll see some fine details about that. But what can happen, and that's what our first few Mishnayos deal with, is what happens when one of the brother's wives is an erva to one or more of the surviving brothers.
Mm.
Okay. And the first Mishnah lists what those arayos are. Like the first case is his daughter, which is allowed, right? An uncle is allowed to marry his niece, according to halacha, and therefore, so it's possible that his brother could have been married to his daughter. Now that he cannot do yibum to his daughter, obviously he's not allowed to marry his daughter. Now all of the co-wives that were married to his brother are also exempt, and not only that, but it'll be passed on. So that's just the little prelude I wanted to say to explain this before we carry on. And let's read through these things in English now. And if you have any questions as we're going along, stop and ask.
Okay. Aleph. 15 women released their co-wives, and their co-wives from Kalitza and from Yibam and Phanidim. They are the following: a man's daughter, a daughter's daughter, a son's daughter, a wife's daughter, her son's daughter, and her daughter's daughter, his mother-in-law, his mother-in-law's mother, and father-in-law's mother, his maternal sister, mother's sister, sister's wives, sisters, maternal brother's wives, the wives of the non-contemptuous brother, and his daughter-in-law. These release the co-wives from Kalitza from Yibam item for an item. If any of these dies, refused, or was divorced, or was found to be an aloneness, their co-wives are permitted. However, one cannot say his mother-in-law or mother-in-law's mother or father-in-law's mother that they were found to be an aloneness or that they were refused.
Okay, so just pause a second there. Two points that came up that I should have mentioned. Yibum is done for brothers through the father. If a person has a maternal brother, there's no din of Yibum at all. So it's only through brothers who share the same father. Okay,
Okay.
that's point one. Second point over here is an Ilonis is a woman who is genetically incapable of having children.
Right. Right.
Okay, and she's not eligible for Yibum, and because the whole point being to have children to
Carry
perpetuate
on. Right. Right. Right.
father's name.
Right.
Okay,
When did this take place? I mean, this is Sinai from Sinai.
from
This whole
Hasina,
thing.
yes, the Saldin is from
Oh,
Hasina.
but then later on, there's a whole thing about you can't marry this one, you can't marry that one, you can't.
Yeah,
So,
so chalitza, the alternative is chalitza, which is what we do today. So
right.
if the brother doesn't want to marry his wife, or she doesn't want to marry him, then they perform chalitza, which permits her to marry any other man.
Another man. Okay.
Okay, so
Okay.
so you can
Got it.
pull, so any one of the wives can form chalitza with any one of the brothers in order to exempt all of the wives and allow them to go out and marry any other man.
So one woman can take care of all the rest of the
That's correct.
co-wife.
That's correct.
Okay. Forgot about okay. Base. How do they release their co-wives? If a man's daughter or any one of these forbidden relations was married to his brother, and he had another wife as well, and he died, just as his daughter is released, so too is her co-wife. If his daughter's co-wife went and married his second brother, and he also had another wife, and then he died, just as his daughter's co-wife is released, so too is her co-wife's co-wife, even if they're after 100. How is it that they are that? How is it that they, if they died, their co-wives are permitted? If a man's daughter or any one of these forbidden relatives was married to his brother, and he also had another wife, and his daughter died or was divorced, and then his brother died, his co-wife is permitted. Anyone who was able to refuse but did not do so, her co-wife requires kalitza, but is prohibited from yibum.
Okay, so now refusal, that's another concept that we got to throw in here, is that if a if a minor girl has been orphaned, her father has died, and the family decides that they want to marry her off at an early age, just for her benefit or whatever. Her mother and brothers can do it, but this is a din derabanan. they're allowed to do it. Only Doraisa, the father has the right to do that. He can accept Kiddushin for her. The mother and brothers don't automatically have that, but Chazal did that as a way to benefit the girl. But because it's a way to benefit the girl, if the girl finds gets into a marriage and she finds that she's unhappy there, she's allowed to go to the Beis Din and say, "I refuse to live with this man," and she doesn't need a get. The whole kiddushin is invalid. It's retroactively nullified. It's as if she's never been married. That's called miyun. Okay.
Okay.
You can only do it because it was a marriage derabanan in the first place. Obviously, a marriage deraisa requires a get, and so at any time before she becomes a an adult, then she can do miyun once she's reached adulthood and she stayed with the man that's considered consent, and she now would need a get, and that is now her consent, and she's accepted the kiddushin basically as binding. Okay, carry on.
I knew a woman who did Kalitza. The man refused to marry her or anything like that. And she did Kalitza, the whole thing.
Well,
She was here and she was
well,
here
we
and
don't we don't do yibum anymore these days. So everyone has to do in such a circumstance, chas v'shalom, has to do chalitza.
right, right. Okay. Yeah, he lived here and she lived in Eretz Israel. She came here. It was a whole big thing with the courts and
Yeah.
anyway. Six forbidden relations are more stringent than these, and for they are married to others. Their co-wives are permitted. His mother, father's brother, father's sister, paternal sister, father's brother's wife, and paternal brother's wife.
Right. In all of these cases, they're not allowed to be married to these people. So therefore, there is clearly no din of yibum at
Right.
all. No din, no yibum, no chalitza, and they were living together, but as a chet, and any children that they would have had from that would have been mamzerim.
Right.
Okay. Dalit, Beis Shammai. This is an amazing Mishnah. It really is like very eye-opening. Beis Shammai matirin hatzaros la'achim. Now, so just what we said over here, what we said in the first case, that they in the first Mishnah that they exempt their co-wives. Um, the Beis Shammai says no, the tzaros are permitted to the brothers. So, for example, if Reuven was married to Shimon's daughter and an unrelated woman, Chana, so Reuven dies. Now Shimon wants to do Yibum. Obviously can't do his daughter, but according to Beis Shammai, he's allowed to marry Chana in Yibum. Beis Hillel Osrim. Beis Hillel say this is an erva. If they get
Mhm.
married together, they're gonna. If they get married, their children will be mamzerim because it's
Oh.
your brother's wife Shiloh b'makom mitzvah is an erva,
Mhm.
for which you're chayav kares and the children are mamzerim. Okay, chaltzu. Okay, what happens if in such a situation, Chana does chalitza? Beis Shammai poslim min hakuna. So they say, okay, she's now passel to kuhuna. She's like a chalutza, and therefore Kohen's not allowed to marry her. Beis Hillel machshirim. Beis Hillel say it was a meaningless act. She didn't need a chalitza. She went free altogether, and therefore there's no meaning to the chalitza, and she's allowed to marry a Kohen. Okay, nis yabmu. What happens if they were taken in Yibum? Beis Shammai machshirim, Beis Hillel poslim. So Beis Shammai say that this is exactly the way the mitzvah should be done, and Beis Hillel say their children are going to be mamzerim. Af al pi she'elu osrim ve'elu matirin, elu poslim ve'elu machshirin. So you see that there's a massive machlokes over here with a lot at stake. We're talking about mamzerus.
Right.
Okay. Lo nimna'u Beis Shammai mi lisan nashim mi Beis Hillel, or lo Beis Hillel mi Beis Shammai. Even though they had this massive machlokes, which had nafkaminas of mamzeris, nonetheless Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai were quite happy to marry into each other. They respected each other that much that they trusted each other. Okay. Kol hataros v'atomos shehayu elu mitarin ve'elu mitarin. Also, like there's in the whole of the Seder Nagayim is like there's the whole Seder of Seder Taros is machlokes of Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai all over the place. And nonetheless, they would eat at each other's tables, no problem. Lo nimno osin taros al elu al gebe elu. And they would work together, no problem. And they had enough respect for each other that they would say, "Look, I hold like this." And so I hold this is Tahor, but for you should know this is Tami. So they would have that kind of respect for each other to say, you shouldn't.
Right.
Okay, so that's a big Musar Haskell for our generation.
Yeah, right.
Ketzad Eishes Achiv Shelo Haya Ba'olamo. So let's dive into the case now of what is a non-contemporaneous brother. Okay, what's the case? Shnei Achim, Reuven and Shimon are alive together. Meis echad mehem. So Reuven dies. V'nolad lehen ach. And then after Reuven dies, Levi is born. Meanwhile, Reuven's widow is still waiting for a yibum. V'achar kach yibem hasheni es eishes achiv. So now Shimon does yibum to Reuven's widow, and then Shimon dies. Okay, Harishona. So the first wife, Yotes mishum eishes achiv shelo haya ba'olamo. So Levi is now sitting in the place of Yibum. But Shimon's wife that he married by Yibum from Reuven was his brother's wife who wasn't alive during his lifetime because Reuven died before Levi was born. Okay. Vashnia Mishum Tsarasa, and Shimon's wife he had before is also pater from Yibum and Chalitza because she's the tzara of an erva. Asaba Mamar, what happens if Shimon did Mamar to her before he died? And so in other words, so what's Mamar? Mamar is Kiddushin Durabanan. It's something that was instituted by Chazal because Minatora, Yibum, you just take her into your bedroom and with witnesses outside and she's your wife. Okay, this is Yibum. But Chazal said, Lo Yafeh. We want to do a nice kiddushin, have a festive meal and whatever, and then but the difference between this kiddushin and the kiddushin that we do under the chuppah now is that this our kiddushin for a first time marriage that's binding deraisa straight away they're married, whereas with mamar is a kiddushin derabanan. And this is, by the way, one of the things that's about Yevamos that I quite enjoy. It's complicated, but you have to wear two pairs of glasses. You got to wear your Doraisa glasses, and then you got to wear your Darabanan glasses, and everything's got to work on both levels. So if you have a Kiddushin Darabanan of Shimon on this widow, so then on the now if Shimon then dies with this non-contemporaneous brother around. Okay, so on the Doraisa level, he cannot do Yibum to anyone over here because it's his brother's wife who and his brother wasn't alive during his lifetime. Okay, but on the Durabanan level, Shimon is not married to this widow. Sorry, Shimon is married to this widow, and therefore the other wife would require chalitza. On the Doraisa level, they're not married at all, and Levi would be allowed to do Yibum with Shimon's one widow because there's only one widow according to the Torah. The other woman wasn't married to him, right? Because remember, derisive glasses, Mamar did nothing. The way he marries her is by having relations with her. Okay, and he hasn't had relations with her, and he died. So there's only one widow, and that's his wife that he had before he did this Mamar. So then, from the Torah level, Levi would be allowed to do Yibum with Shimon's one widow, but on the Durabanan level, Levi was married. Shimon was married to this widow that he's asked to marry to, and now therefore she doesn't. On the Deraisa level, the other woman needs chalitza, but on the Derabanan level, he's not allowed to do yibum. So therefore, he has to do chalitza in order to release her. This is
Okay.
this, this is one of the things. Every time you come across a case in Yevamos like this, you got to have Doraisa glasses and Durabanan glasses and say, okay, what's the halacha going to be? Because we got to satisfy the halacha both on the Durabanan and on the Doraisa level. Okay, so that's why the second woman has to do chalitza, but not yibum. Almost identical case now. Shnei achim umeis echad mehen. So you got two brothers, Reuven and Shimon. Reuven dies. Yibem hasheni is eshes achiv. And now Shimon does yibum. And now he's married to Reuven's widow and his own wife from before. Okay. And now, and now Levi is born, their brother. Okay,
Mhm.
so Levi was born. The important difference being now that Levi was born after Shimon had already done Yibum with the widow. He wasn't okay, and so he was born into a world. He wasn't born into a world where there was a woman waiting for Yibum who was married to his brother who had died before he was born. Okay, okay. Now Levi is born, and now Shimon dies. So now there are two widows there, one of which was Reuven's wife before Levi was born. Harishona yotzeis mishum eshes achiv shelo hayo ba'al olamo. So according to the Tanakama, the it's the same Isser. Makes absolutely no difference whether Levi was born before or after the Yibum happened. She's Aser. Okay. Vashnia Mishum Tarasa. And Mimela then once she's Aser as an Ereva, then the second wife goes free straight away because she's a Tzara of an Ereva. Asapa Mamar. What happens if Shimon had only done Mamar to her? Well, it's going to be exactly the same case as the previous one, and then he died. Hashniya choletzes v'lo misya bemes, because we've got exactly the same circumstances as the previous Mishnah, effectively, because one way or another, Levi's born into a world where Shimon's done Mamar. He's not actually married to her, so on the Doraisa level, it's definitely his brother's wife that wasn't alive during his lifetime. Rabbi Shimon, however, disagrees. He says, "Miyabem le'ezo mehen sheyirtze, o choleit le'ezo mehen sheyirtze." He says because he was when he was by the time he was born, this previous wife of Reuven was now Shimon's wife. Now that she's Shimon's wife, the din of Eishes Achiv Shelo Hayava Olamo has fallen away, according to Rabbi Shimon only. Okay. And therefore, when Shimon dies, he can do chalitza or he can do yibum to either of these two wives. Okay. I don't have a psak over here as to whether the halacha follows Tanakama or Rabbi Shimon, but I'm going to assume that the halacha would follow the Tanakama in a situation like this.
Mhm.
Okay,
Okay.
let's go back.
I, it's hard to wrap your head around this 'cause it just seems like it's a free for all.
So go back. It's absolutely not a free for all. That's the thing. There are very, very strong rules. Um, Go back and think about these cases, and it often helps to draw a diagram of who are the people and who's died and who hasn't died and who's left, and have your two sets of lenses, Doraisa and Darbanan. So
Uh,
and remember, so when Chazal say that something has happened and it didn't happen in the Torah, then it didn't happen in the Torah. Okay, so the mamar gets wiped away by your Doraisa lenses. It's as if the mamar didn't happen. But you still got to put on the Durabanan lenses and make sure that whatever Chazal said is also Mekayim.
okay.
It can be complicated, and unfortunately, we don't have the time to dive
Right,
into
right.
it right now. But it's if you keep that as a perspective, you can work these cases out yourself with once you learn how the rules work. Okay, Chagiga, Aleph
Okay.
Gimel.
Love Gimel. Olios which are not obligatory may be brought during Kalamoid, or olives will be brought only from consecrated funds, but shlomin may be purchased with tithe money. Concerning the Chagiga brought on the first day of Pesach, the Shammai says it may be purchased only with unconsecrated money. Beis Hillel says it may be purchased with tithe money. Yisrael discharge the obligation with vow offerings, gift offerings, and on the animal tithe. And Kohanim fulfill their obligation with sin offerings, guilt offerings, firstborn of animals, and the breast and thigh of shalamin, and but not with foul offerings, nor with meal offerings. One who has many that eat but few possessions should bring many shlamim and few olos. One who has many possessions but few that eat should bring many olos and few shlamim. If both possessions are eaters, or few are procuring, this is said, one silver ma and two silver ma's. If both possessions and eaters are many concerning that, it is said, every man according to his hands giving, according to the blessing Hashem your God has given you.
Okay,
Okay. Okay. And we are on to
Anis,
Tanis.
Aleph Dalad.
If the 17th day of Marqueshan arrived, but Ray did not fall, the distinguished individuals would start fasting a series of 3 fasts. They may eat and drink after dark, and they are permitted to work, bathe, anoint themselves with oil, wear shoes, and have marital relations. Rosh Chodesh Kislev arrived, but the rain did not fall. Beis Din decrees a series of 3 fasts upon the entire community. They may eat and drink after dark, and they're permitted to work, bathe, anoint themselves with oil, wear shoes, and have marital relations. If these fasts pass and they are not answered with rain, Bezdin decrees a series of 3 or more fasts upon the entire community. They may eat and drink only while it's still daytime and are forbidden to work, bathe, anoint themselves with oil, wear shoes, and have marital relations. Also, they may flock to public bathhouses. If these fasts passed and they were not answered with rain, Bezdin decrees a series of 7 more fasts upon them, totaling 13 fasts upon the entire community. These latter 7 fasts are more stringent than the earlier ones, for on these they sound the shofar and lock the stores. On Monday they may open the store doors partially toward the evening, but on Thursday they're permitted to keep the doors open in honor of Shabbos.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
and we are on to Pesachim.
Yeah.
Pesachim,
Hey.
Ches Hey. Azavu experienced 2 charges. They may slaughter on his behalf on the seventh day. If he experienced 3, they may slaughter on his behalf on the eighth day. A woman who observes a day against a day, they may slaughter on her behalf on her second day. If she experiences charges for 2 days, they may slaughter on her behalf on the third day. And on the Zava, they may slaughter on her behalf on the eighth day. And one who clears away a pile of rubble, likewise one who has promised to release him from prison, and a sick or an aged person able to eat the volume of an olive, their slaughter is on their behalf. For any of these, they slaughter them alone, unless they cause the Pesach offering to become invalid. Therefore, if any disqualification befalls them, they are exempt from participating in the second Pesach, except for the one who was clearing a pile of rubble, for he was found to be contaminated retroactively. They may not slaughter the Pesach offering for an individual. These are the words of Rabbi Yehuda, but Rabbi Yossi permits this. Even if a group consists of 100 people, if they are unable to eat the volume of an olive, we may not slaughter on their behalf. We may not form a group solely of women, slaves, and minors. Okay.
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 Can I?
Kalayim. Here we are. Um, yes, hey. Perverted are forbidden, but the remark is permitted. Wild men like creatures are wild men, wild animals. Reb Yossi says these convey 10 uncleannesses as a human being. The hedgehog and the weasel of the bushes are wild animals. The weasel of the bushes, Reb Yossi say that Beit Shammai say an olive's bulk conveys uncleanliness by carrying and a lentil's bulk by contact. The wild ox of a kind of decimated the wild ox of a kind of domesticated animal. Rabbi Yoshi says it is a kind of undomesticated animal. Dog is a kind of undomesticated animal, and Rabbi says it is a kind of a domesticated animal. The pig is a kind of domesticated animal. The wild donkey is a kind of undomesticated animal. The elephant and the ape are kinds of undomesticated animals, and a man may draw, plow, or drive with any of them. The Kalayim prohibition applies only to wool and linen. Only wool and linen are rendered unclean by Nagayim. The priests wear for service in the temple only wool and linen, and if camel's wool and sheep's wool have been tackled together, that the greater part of the camel's wool is permitted, and the greater part of sheep's wool is forbidden. If it is half and half, it is forbidden, and the same applies to linen and hackled together. Okay.
Okay.
Kalayim, Kalim.
Yep.
Okay, good test, Gimel. The part of the Mizram, the extension from the bed is susceptible to tumor, whatever its length may be. These are the words of the mayor. But Rashi says only until 10 handbreadths. The minimum length of the remembrance of the Mizram is only 7 handbreadths, which is sufficient to make it a flap for a donkey. If a zav is supposed to, if a zav is supposed to be supported by the bread and by the Mizram, it transmits tumor to 2 and invalidates 1. These are the words of Meir. Rabbi Yoshi says if a zav is supported by the bed and the Mizram, the first 10 handbreadths of the Mizram transmit tumor to 2 and invalidate 1. The part of the Mizram from 10 handbreadths and outward will transmit tumor to 1 and invalidates 1. If a zav is supported by the Mizram from the 10 handbreadths and onward is tummy, from 10 handbreadths and outward is tahor. If a bed was tummy midras and one wound a mizram around it, the entire bed is tummy midras. If mizram is removed, the bed itself is tummy midras, and the mizram is tummy due to contact with midras. Ahav. If the bed was tummy with 7-day tumor, the one round of mizram around it, the entire bed is tummy with 7-day tumor. If the mizram has removed, the bed itself is tummy with 7-day tumor, and mizram is tummy with evening tumor. If the bed was tummy with evening tumor and one round of mizram around it, the entire bed is tummy with evening tumor. If the mizram is removed, the bed itself is tummy with evening tumor, and the mizram is tahor.
Okay.
Okay.
That's
And the
that.
last one we have here is Sanhedrin. Sanhedrin. Base.
I'm kind of running late for sure, so let's do this one
I'll do
ourselves.
this one. I'll do it
Okay, and
myself.
I'll go run.
Mentorship, I
Okay.
will see you tomorrow. Thank you. We're
Feel
going somewhere
good.
else tomorrow. What do we do tomorrow after tomorrow? Sanhedrin. We have
Oh,
one more.
we're finishing Sanhedrin tomorrow? Yeah, then
Uh,
Marcos.
no, we have one more after that, so but we're going to finish tomorrow. I'm sorry,
Okay.
which one? Which one did you say, Sean?
Marcos comes after Sanhedrin.
So I can.
Marcos.
Marcos. Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. I
Okay,
understand.
sure.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, cheers.